Day 59. Numbers 17 to 19. And the Lord said to Moses, Speak to the Israelites and take from them 12 staffs, one from the leader of each tribe. Write each man's name on his staff, and write Aaron's name on the staff of Levi, because there must be one staff for the head of each tribe. Place the staffs in the tent of meeting in front of the testimony, where I meet with you. The staff belonging to the man I choose will sprout, and I will rid myself of the constant grumbling of the Israelites against you. So Moses spoke to the Israelites, and each of their leaders gave him a staff, one for each of the leaders of their tribes, 12 staffs in all. And Aaron's staff was among them. Then Moses placed the staffs before the Lord in the tent of the testimony. The next day Moses entered the tent of the testimony and saw that Aaron's staff, representing the house of Levi, had sprouted, put forth buds, blossomed, and produced almonds. Then Moses brought out all the staffs from the Lord's presence to all the Israelites. They saw them, and each man took his own staff. The Lord said to Moses, Put Aaron's staff back in front of the testimony, to be kept as a sign for the rebellious, so that you may put an end to their grumbling against me, lest they die. So Moses did as the Lord had commanded him. Then the Israelites declared to Moses, Look, we are perishing. We are lost, we are all lost. Anyone who comes near the tabernacle of the Lord will die. Are we all going to perish? So the Lord said to Aaron, You and your sons and your father's house must bear the iniquity involving the sanctuary. And you and your sons alone must bear the iniquity involving your priesthood. But bring with you also your brothers from the tribe of Levi, the tribe of your father, that they may join you and assist you and your sons before the tent of the testimony. And they shall attend to your duties and to all the duties of the tent, but they must not come near to the furnishings of the sanctuary or the altar, or both they and you will die. They are to join you and attend to the duties of the tent of meeting, doing all the work at the tent, but no outsider may come near you. And you shall attend to the duties of the sanctuary and of the altar, so that wrath may not fall on the Israelites again. Behold, I myself have selected your fellow Levites from the Israelites as a gift to you, dedicated to the Lord to perform the service for the tent of meeting. But only you and your sons shall attend to your priesthood for everything concerning the altar and what is inside the veil, and you are to perform that service. I am giving you the work of the priesthood as a gift, but any outsider who comes near the sanctuary must be put to death. Then the Lord said to Aaron, Behold, I have put you in charge of my offerings. As for all the sacred offerings of the Israelites, I have given them to you and your sons as a portion and a permanent statute. A portion of the most holy offerings reserved from the fire will be yours. From all the offerings they render to me as most holy offerings, whether grain offerings or sin offerings or guilt offerings, that part belongs to you and your sons. You are to eat it as a most holy offering, and every male may eat it. You shall regard it as holy. And this is yours as well, the offering of their gifts, along with all the wave offerings of the Israelites. I have given this to you and your sons and daughters as a permanent statute. Every ceremonially clean person in your household may eat it. I give you all the freshest olive oil and all the finest new wine and grain that the Israelites give to the Lord as their firstfruits. The firstfruits of everything in their land that they bring to the Lord will belong to you. Every ceremonially clean person in your household may eat them. Every devoted thing in Israel belongs to you. The firstborn of every womb, whether man or beast, that is offered to the Lord belongs to you. But you must surely redeem every firstborn son and every firstborn male of unclean animals. You are to pay the redemption price for a month-old male according to your valuation, 5 shekels of silver, according to the sanctuary shekel, which is 20 gerahs. But you must not redeem the firstborn of an ox, a sheep, or a goat, they are holy. You are to sprinkle their blood on the altar and burn their fat as an offering made by fire, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. And their meat belongs to you, just as the breast and right thigh of the wave offering belong to you. All the holy offerings that the Israelites present to the Lord I give to you and to your sons and daughters as a permanent statute. It is a permanent covenant of salt before the Lord for you and your offspring. Then the Lord said to Aaron, You will have no inheritance in their land, nor will you have any portion among them. I am your portion and your inheritance among the Israelites. Behold, I have given to the Levites all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in return for the work they do, the service of the tent of meeting. No longer may the Israelites come near to the tent of meeting, or they will incur guilt and die. The Levites are to perform the work of the tent of meeting, and they must bear their iniquity. This is a permanent statute for the generations to come. The Levites will not receive an inheritance among the Israelites. For I have given to the Levites as their inheritance the tithe that the Israelites present to the Lord as a contribution. That is why I told them that they would not receive an inheritance among the Israelites. And the Lord instructed Moses, Speak to the Levites and tell them, when you receive from the Israelites the tithe that I have given you as your inheritance, you must present part of it as an offering to the Lord, a tithe of the tithe. Your offering will be reckoned to you as grain from the threshing floor or juice from the winepress. So you are to present an offering to the Lord from all the tithes you receive from the Israelites, and from these you are to give the Lord's offering to Aaron the priest. You must present the offering due the Lord from all the best of every gift, the holiest part of it. Therefore say to the Levites, when you have presented the best part, it will be reckoned to you as the produce of the threshing floor or winepress. And you and your households may eat the rest of it anywhere, it is the compensation for your work at the tent of meeting. Once you have presented the best part of it, you will not incur guilt because of it. But you must not defile the sacred offerings of the Israelites, or else you will die. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, This is the statute of the law that the Lord has commanded, instruct the Israelites to bring you an unblemished red heifer that has no defect and has never been placed under a yoke. Give it to Eleazar the priest, and he will have it brought outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood on his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. Then the heifer must be burned in his sight. Its hide, its flesh, and its blood are to be burned, along with its dung. The priest is to take cedar wood, hyssop, and scarlet wool and throw them onto the burning heifer. Then the priest must wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, after that he may enter the camp, but he will be ceremonially unclean until evening. The one who burned the heifer must also wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and he too will be ceremonially unclean until evening. Then a man who is ceremonially clean is to gather up the ashes of the heifer and store them in a ceremonially clean place outside the camp. They must be kept by the congregation of Israel for preparing the water of purification, this is for purification from sin. The man who has gathered up the ashes of the heifer must also wash his clothes, and he will be ceremonially unclean until evening. This is a permanent statute for the Israelites and for the foreigner residing among them. Whoever touches any dead body will be unclean for 7 days. He must purify himself with the water on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a human corpse and fails to purify himself defiles the tabernacle of the Lord. That person must be cut off from Israel. He remains unclean, because the water of purification has not been sprinkled on him, and his uncleanness is still on him. This is the law when a person dies in a tent, everyone who enters the tent and everyone already in the tent will be unclean for 7 days, and any open container without a lid fastened on it is unclean. Anyone in the open field who touches someone who has been killed by the sword or has died of natural causes, or anyone who touches a human bone or a grave, will be unclean for 7 days. For the purification of the unclean person, take some of the ashes of the burnt sin offering, put them in a jar, and pour fresh water over them. Then a man who is ceremonially clean is to take some hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle the tent, all the furnishings, and the people who were there. He is also to sprinkle the one who touched a bone, a grave, or a person who has died or been slain. The man who is ceremonially clean is to sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. After he purifies the unclean person on the 7th day, the one being cleansed must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and that evening he will be clean. But if a person who is unclean does not purify himself, he will be cut off from the assembly, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of purification has not been sprinkled on him, he is unclean. This is a permanent statute for the people, the one who sprinkles the water of purification must wash his clothes, and whoever touches the water of purification will be unclean until evening. Anything the unclean person touches will become unclean, and anyone who touches it will be unclean until evening. Mark 6 verses 30 to 56. Meanwhile, the apostles gathered around Jesus and brought him news of all they had done and taught. And he said to them, Come with me privately to a solitary place, and let us rest for a while. For many people were coming and going, and they did not even have time to eat. So they went away in a boat by themselves to a solitary place. But many people saw them leaving and recognized them. They ran together on foot from all the towns and arrived before them. When Jesus stepped ashore and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. And he began to teach them many things. By now the hour was already late. So the disciples came to Jesus and said, This is a desolate place, and the hour is already late. Dismiss the crowd so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But Jesus told them, You give them something to eat? They asked him, Should we go out and spend 200 denarii to give all of them bread to eat? Go and see how many loaves you have, he told them. And after checking, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have the people sit in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, Jesus spoke a blessing and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And he divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied, and the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. And there were 5,000 men who had eaten the loaves. Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After bidding them farewell, he went up on the mountain to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and Jesus was alone on land. He could see that the disciples were straining to row, because the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went out to them, walking on the sea. He intended to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the sea, they cried out, thinking he was a ghost, for they all saw him and were terrified. But Jesus spoke up at once, Take courage. It is I. Do not be afraid. Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. And the disciples were utterly astounded, for they had not understood about the loaves, but their hearts had been hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and moored the boat. As soon as they got out of the boat, the people recognized Jesus and ran through that whole region, carrying the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, villages and towns and countrysides, they laid the sick in the marketplaces and begged him just to let them touch the fringe of his cloak. And all who touched him were healed.